Good morning, folks. My name's Isaac, and today we're going to be doing a quick lesson on modes. When musicians start learning modes, it can be very confusing. As in, what is a mode? How do I use it? And how modes were first explained to me, and explained to a lot of musicians apparently, is they'll tell you, okay, you've got your C major scale, right? Just take that C major scale, start on the different note, so start on the second note here, and just go up the same scale. And then rinse and repeat until you've got all the modes, right? So it's just the C major scale, or whatever major scale, and you're just starting on a different note and just going through the C major scale. And while that's true, as in, yes, there's 7 modes, right, that are derived from a major scale. What I really don't like about that particular approach is if you just teach it like that, for me at least, you're not going to get out of the headspace that you're just playing a C major scale, right? You're just playing C major and you're just starting at different points. And how modes were taught to me that way, it didn't really click with me as far as okay, then now where do I use it? I'm just playing the C major scale. I don't get it. So we're going to talk about modes in a little different way. We're going to go back to that concept, right? That concept that we can get all the 7 modes from the C major scale. Hopefully you're kind of already familiar with that. But now let's talk about modes in a different way, and I think in a more equally important way. So we're going to talk about modes as seven separate scales now, right? Not just C major scale starting at different points. These are 7 distinct scales, and let's talk about this approach to modes. So I'm going to share my screen here, and right here we got some fingerings for the modes, but let's ignore that for a second. I'm going to make a table here. Okay. All right, so we've got 7 modes here. Ionian, which is just your major scale. You've got Dorian. You've got Phrygian. You've got Lydian. You've got Mixolydian. You've got Aeolian. And you've got Locrian, right? So these are your 7 modes derived from the major scale. So hopefully you're kind of familiar with the names. If not, here they are. Here they all are. Just some important notes. Aeolian is also known as the natural minor scale, right? A lot of people learn this on the piano. If you're playing a C major scale, all the white keys starting on C, you're playing Ionian, and then when you start on A, you've got the A minor scale if you play all the white keys, and that's your natural minor key or natural minor scale. So those are these are probably the 2 most important modes out of all of them, the Ionian and the Aeolian, at least the most commonly used. But let's actually break down what is in each mode. Okay, and I want you to just kind of forget the idea that it's these modes are derived all from the same scale. Let's just treat them as 7 different scales. We'll go back to that in a second. But let's look at Ionian. We got root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Those are the scale degrees in Ionian. Now in Dorian, we have a root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, a regular 6, and a flat 7. Okay, so we're now treating each mode as a scale degree formula, basically. If you're not familiar with this kind of way of describing scales, hit me up for a lesson because I can explain that further. Today I'm just kind of delving into modes, assuming that you kind of know some of this. So root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Now Phrygian is root, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay? Let me just double check that. Actually, no, there's a flat 6 in there as well. My bad. Root, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. Yeah, something didn't feel right there. But That's the scale degree formula for Phrygian. And now Lydian is root 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7. Mixolydian is root T 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. And Aeolian, our natural minor scale, is root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7. And Locrian, probably the one we use the least, is root flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, and flat 7. Sounds like this. Notice that Locrian is the only one that does anything with the 5, right? It flattens the 5. Every single other one does not do anything with the 5. So in this column, I'm just going to put the scale degrees that we altered, right? So in Ionian, there were no scale degrees we altered. In Dorian, we flattened third, and we flattened the 7. Oops, I don't want it to capitalize that and be... Oh, that's annoying. That's really annoying. Let's do this. No. Flat third. We're just going to do that. I'm just going to put a period there so it doesn't do that. And now for Phrygian, we've got flat 2, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. For Lydian, it's just sharp 4. Okay? And Mixolydian is just flat 7. Oh, let's do that again. Flat 7. Aeolian, it's flat 3, flat 6. And I'm sorry, there should be a flat 7 there. Okay? And then Locrian, we have probably the most altered stuff here. We got flat 2, flat 3, flat 5, flat 6, and flat 7. So 5 of the 7 notes here are altered. So I'm not sure why I had this fourth column here. I'm going to delete that. Okay, so now this is what I wish was shown to me initially when teaching me modes. Each mode is really its own distinct scale, and that's how I want you to kind of think of that. We'll go back to the idea of, like I said before, how each mode is derived from one major scale. It's a very useful concept, but I think this is the first thing that should really be taught, is that each mode is its own distinct scale, and that its own distinct scale, which each of its own different scale degrees kind of altered. So we got Ionian. So this is how I want you to kind of go through the modes here really quickly. Is we're just going to stay in C, and we're going to play each mode in C. So instead of C major, C Dorian, and so on and so forth, E Phrygian, F Lydian, that's what you do it if you're just playing the C major scale starting at different points. Instead, we're just going to start at C for every single one. And we're going to go through Ionian, go through all the modes. So C Ionian, root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And root again. Dorian, root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, root. Phrygian, root, flat 2, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. Lydian, root 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7. Root again. Mixolydian, root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, root. And Aeolian, or natural minor, root 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, root. And finally, our favorite Locrian, root, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, flat 6, flat 7, root. Okay. So now we got these 7 distinct scales. And each mode in certain contexts. The purpose of the modes is like each mode has like its own distinct kind of emotion, I guess you could say. And it's really important to be able to kind of distinguish between the two. And I feel when you learn it the way where you derive it all from one major scale and do C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, and like that, you don't really hear the difference between the modes, at least for me, because it's all, you're basically playing the C major scale starting at different points. Now, in this case, we are doing all the modes, but the root note for all these modes are just C. So you're really hearing the difference between each mode. And what I want you to realize is, let's simplify this even further. So we're going to divide the modes into two categories. We got major modes and we got minor modes. Okay? And if you're familiar with scale degrees and the construction of chords, you can probably guess that the majors have a regular major third and the minors have a flat third. So we're going to divide the modes based on whether they have a third or a flat third. So our major modes are Ionian, Lydian, oops, I think I misspelled that. Yep, Ionian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. We got 3 major modes, and then we've got 4 minor modes. We got Dorian, Phrygian, I think I misspelled that as well there, that's fine. Aeolian, and Locrian. I'm gonna do that. Okay, so we got 3 major modes and 4 minor modes. Now, why did I do it like this? Well, I think the easiest way to kind of like get really familiar with the distinct sound of the modes, because that's where it gets really practical, right? If you're able to hear when like a solo or like a theme or like a piece of music is concentrated on like one mode, like Ionian or Lydian, and if you can recognize that, then you can quickly pick it up on guitar or whatever instrument you play. And it's also just great for improvising. So we want to get the sounds of the modes distinguished from one another. So what I would do is I would just one at a time, just let's focus on the major modes for now. Let's not do any of the minor modes. Let's focus on the major modes. And what's nice about the major modes is like the difference between each other is very minimal, right? Because for Ionian, it's just a major scale. Lydian, all we're doing is taking that Ionian and sharpening the 4th. So like if you literally just improvise in the C major for a while, you see Ionian. Just kind of noodle around on some notes there. And now let's make it Lydian. So now we're going to sharpen the 4th and just hear the difference between the vibes between this. C Ionian. Lydian. Right? Do you kind of hear the difference between the two? And it's all because of that sharp 4. Lydian almost kind of has like an alien kind of mysterious sound to it, just because you got that sharp 4, which is the tritone to the root now. But anyway, now let's, instead of going from Ionian to Lydian, let's go from Ionian to Mixolydian, right? So Mixolydian has that flat 7, right? So I'm going to do the exact same thing, but instead this time I'm going to be improvising a little bit in Ionian, and then I'll improvise a little bit in Mixolydian. So Ionian. Mixolydian. Ionian. Mixolydian. One thing you'll notice, if you're not familiar with, is a Mixolydian with that flat 7. It's basically just like a not a minor pentatonic. It'd be like a kind of a major kind of pentatonic sound, like a dominant 7, which you hear a lot in blues. So Mixolydian is actually probably might actually be more common than the Ionian or any of the other modes, because Mixolydian mode is used mostly like in blues and rock. So if you play mostly that, Mixolydian mode is going to be the one you want to get really familiar with. But see how I distinguish the sound of Lydian and Mixolydian from Ionian, and now you get kind of really familiar with these 3 distinct modes. Now let's talk about the minor modes here. So we're kind of going to do the same thing. So actually, I'm gonna rearrange this, and I'm gonna put Aeolian on the top here because Aeolian is the natural minor scale, and probably the one you're gonna be most familiar with, at least the sound of, because it's so commonly used. So again, Aeolian is flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. So I'll play C Aeolian here. Now let's look at Dorian. Dorian, the only difference between Dorian and Aeolian is that the 6 is not flat, it's raised. So it's just flat 3 and flat 7. So actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say 6 is not flattened. Right, so I'm just comparing. I'm going to compare these modes to Aeolian here. Okay, Aeolian's like kind of our base, similar to how Ionian was our base, and we compared it to Lydian and Mixolydian. So Dorian 6 is not flattened. So let me improvise a little bit in Aeolian. Dorian. Aeolian. Dorian. So notice they have a bit of a distinct sound. So with the Dorian having that raised 6, so right there. Okay, and now Phrygian has a flat 2 now, and still has flat 3, flat 6, flat 7. So literally Phrygian is just the same as Aeolian, except you're flattening that 2, which gives it a much more kind of intense sound, or almost kind of like a Arabic, Middle Eastern kind of vibe with the flat 2. So let me kind of play both Aeolian. Oh. Phrygian. Aeolian. Phrygian. All right. So Phrygian has this really distinct sound because of that flat 2. Now Locrian also has the flat 2, but it also has that flat 5, and that's like that Locrian. For Locrian, that flat 5 is the kicker, right? So is kind of getting into chord theory. I might go into this more in a separate video, but we're familiar with kind of like how in the key of, let's say, C major, you've got 7 diatonic chords, very similar to how we have 7 modes, and it's kind of nice to like put those two ideas together. So we got C major 7, the 2 chords D minor, 3 chords E minor 7, 4 chords F, 5 chord is the dominant, the G7, 6 chord is A minor 7, and now the 7 chord is a half diminished chord, B half diminished. Now the 7 chord is half diminished, and it's the only one that has a flat 5, similar to how Locrian is the only mode with flat 5. And if we go back to the other chords, like the 5 chord, the 5 chord's the only one that's got the major with the flat 7, and Mixolydian is the only one with the major and the flat 7. So you can kind of start linking these chords in the diatonic sequence with the individual modes. Going back to Locrian. Locrian's the only one with flat 5. So really, Locrian mode's kind of like a half diminished kind of sounding scale, right? Because it's got in plain C Locrian here we got root, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5. There's a C minor 7, flat 5, C half diminished. Kind of works over that chord, right? Reason why Locrian isn't really a very used mode, like especially in like rock and like kind of jam band stuff, is you're usually not going to have jams that like stay on a minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished, right? You'll see Locrian mode kind of used in like snippets a lot in like jazz and things like that, but probably the least used mode I use. So just know that Locrian has a flat 5, which distinguishes itself really from the Phrygian, right? Only difference between Phrygian and Locrian is that flat 5, and again, the difference between Phrygian and Aeolian is that flat 2. So now we can kind of like see like what am I saying? Between each mode, you can kind of see the small differences. And dividing them into major and minor makes it a whole lot easier to kind of conquer and distinguish the sounds of modes. So I know there were some concepts here that I glossed over. I made this video kind of assuming you had a bit of background knowledge with modes. I just wanted to approach modes and this way using scale degrees, because when I initially approached modes, it was just C major scale, start on different notes, which I think is how it's taught a lot. So hopefully this gave you some new insight on modes. But if you have any questions on stuff I've kind of glossed over and things you want me to elaborate on, feel free to comment, or you can hit me up for virtual and online, virtual and in person